Okay, welcome everyone. I think we'll get started. Got a great turnout of 50 participants so far, and we're expecting a few more, so we might have them coming in during the session. So firstly, I'd like to welcome you all to the first PEAL Post-Entry English and Academic Language Special Interest Group for the year. And we're really excited to welcome you here and really appreciate your commitment of time in participating in this. Before we get started, how about everybody? I can see faces from around Australia actually, and maybe beyond. So how about if you just indicate in the chat where you are coming to us from today. So I'm on Gadigal land on the University of Sydney campuses, and that's in Camperdown in Sydney. So if you just pop it in the chat, we can see where everyone's coming to from today. Right. Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Perth, fantastic. Central Coast. Great. So lots of diversity there. That's fantastic. Oh, Darwin, very good. Ticked off another city. All right. So I will now share my screen and we'll get started. Okay. So once again, I'd like to welcome everyone to the PEAL SIG for 2023. My name is Catherine Alston. I'm the convener of the SIG, and I would like to welcome the deputy conveners to the SIG. We have John Smith, who is continuing in the role from his last term. John, do you want to give a wave, even though we might not be able to see you on the screen, but give a wave for those of you who can see you. I'd like to introduce James Heath from UNSW, who is a new deputy convener. We're very happy to have him on the team. And Sue from Charles Darwin University. Hi, Sue. All right, and it's a pleasure to work with the deputy conveners and with Sophie as well. It's already been an inspiring conversation in our first couple of meetings that we've had this year. So moving on, we sent out a survey at the start of the year asking you and other participants about what kind of focus areas you would like to see for this year. Based on the results of the survey, and I want to thank you for spending the time to go through the survey. It means a lot to us to have your input in this, very important, of course. So as a result of the input from the survey, we've come up with the following sort of program for the year with a series of 4 events. Some of these might change a little bit over the year, depending on what happens. Like, for example, if another ChatGPT-like thing lands on the scene, we might have to all throw up our hands and change directions. But at the moment, this is what we're thinking. So in June, a session on transition pedagogies in the PEAL space and looking at the intersection between theory and practice, and that will be a webinar. Session 3 is really exciting in that it will be a face-to-face pre-conference workshop from 1:30 to 4 as part of the English Australia conference. And that's where we'll look at sharing case studies in discipline-specific language development in the PEAL space. And what we'd really like to see in that session is active participation from everyone who attends, but also contributions from across the community of practice, of practitioners working in the space across Australia. So if you're perhaps interested in contributing, please get in touch with us and we can have a conversation about that. And we'd love to see you, as many people as possible, face-to-face for that as well. Then session 4 in November, we'll look at being and becoming a PEAL practitioner. And that will be interesting in looking at the different ways that we can continuously develop professionally in this space and perhaps make the transition to the space as well. So I think that's all from me. Now I would like to hand over to James, who is going to take us through the agenda and give us an introduction on what we're looking at today, which is using AI tools in PEAL. Thanks, James.
Thank you, Kat. Just really briefly before I get into the topic, as a new deputy convener, I just wanted to say thank you to the previous conveners from the last couple of years. And personally, I sort of the end of 2020, started 2021, I was transitioning from a teaching position within a direct entry program into a PEAL role, and I found the PEAL SIG incredibly helpful. And for anyone who's new to the SIG, I'm going to put a link into the chat, which is the recordings of the webinars from the last couple of years. And there's a real wealth of resources there. And I do encourage you to check them out if you haven't, particularly things around the archetypal kind of PEAL systems that are used, and different successful models of PEAL delivery that have been part of the conversation for the last couple of years. So I'm very grateful for those, and I hope that whenever you put ChatGPT or AI on your topic, you get a whole bunch of new people coming along. So for those of you who are here because it says AI, go check out those other resources. They're really great. So AI tools in PEAL. So I'm assuming that this is like your 167th webinar that you've attended on ChatGPT or AI tools in education. And look, if it's not, I don't know what you've been doing for fun for the last 5 months, because, well, this has been a roller coaster, right? From this initial, I guess, moral panic around using these tools for cheating and the death of the essay, through to ways in which we can empower students to utilize these tools in ways that they're going to do in the future career. I think it's been such a fascinating ride, and I'm sure a lot of you have been down lots of different rabbit holes thinking about this. So I guess, as a convener group, we were slightly reticent, if I can say that, Kat, to launch into this topic initially, because so much has been said already. But as Kat mentions, this was a popular topic in the survey. And I think that what we thought was that what would be great for our members is to look at some case studies, and then to be able to have a chat ourselves, because it is evolving so rapidly. I just wanted to give kind of one definition of GPT-4, and it's maybe not one that you have heard before. I was listening to a podcast recently with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, just after GPT-4 was released, which is, of course, the updated version of GPT 3.5, which was the large language model behind ChatGPT. And so the interviewer asked him, what is GPT-4? And he said, I'm going to quote him, "It's a system that we'll look back at and say it was very early AI. It's slow, it's buggy, it doesn't do a lot of things very well," which is a very interesting approach to marketing, I think, for the CEO of an organization to be describing the product in that way. But I think it tells us something about where the vision for these kinds of tools are, and the way that the conversation will evolve. And so I think it's a really important thing for us to keep talking about, particularly, I think, in terms of AI literacy, because a lot of the work that we do is around literacies. How do we help students to develop academic literacies, information literacies? What about AI literacies? What is it that our students need to know to be able to use these tools effectively, and to be able to use them in an ethical way? And I think that conversation around ethics needs to underpin everything that we talk about. So if you can show the next slide, please, Kat. This is our agenda for today. We have 3 case studies from practitioners and people who've been really doing interesting things with AI within the kind of PEAL academic learning space. And we're going to hear from each of these 3 people. And then after that, we're going to have time to discuss as a group some of the ideas that might have come out of these case studies, and some of the ways that we're using AI tools within our own practice. So we want this to be a really practical session where we can take ideas that we can actually use both in our teaching practice, but as professionals in our work environment as well, ways to, not only reduce workload, but maybe to enhance and push the direction of the ways in which we think about our jobs as well. So without further ado, I might hand over to Nina Ginsberg, who is a tutor and language instructor at Griffith English Language Centre, and is going to talk firstly about the way that we use AI within teaching contexts. So I believe, John, you're going to share some slides for Nina.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. Before we get started, just in the chat box or as a reaction, can you indicate to me if anyone came to my session at the recent EAPD Fest in Queensland by any chance? And because we're such a diverse group from around Australia, I presume not all of us were there. Okay. See a couple of familiar faces. That just gives me a good gauge. Fantastic. Okay. And in the chat box, can you type in if you are using an AI tool currently in your classroom as a teacher, can you pop the name of that AI tool in the chat box just so we can get a quick idea of who is using what or what is being used? Yep. And as they're coming in, just as a quick setup, the session that I was running at the recent Queensland PD Fest was geared more, well, specifically not for ChatGPT, and also for teachers who weren't as confident or haven't been using AI specifically in their classes, but wanted to lean in and use a couple of the tools and get more confident and familiar with it, but also tools that were language target appropriate, in line with the curriculum, quick and easy for students and teachers to use in class, and didn't require a lot of explicit teaching on how to use the tools. Thanks, John. Let's go through. The PPT that I've got up here is the full slides that I used in the session. So I'm going to flip through a couple of those. So John, if we can go to a quick note about these AI tools. And while we're doing that, in the chat box, if you would like to follow along and get the links to these tools, because we're going to flip through a couple of these slides. And for more information on how I use these particular tools that I'll show you today, just hit a couple of high points. If you'd like more information in the link, you can go to my blog, and I've detailed in a little bit more specificity how I use them in the classroom. And I'd love to hear how you modify or adapt those to your classroom. So not ChatGPT, I'm going to give 4 other tools, and I've tried to give a bit of a broad base, maybe one writing, one speaking, one listening, and one other kind of mix up. And my idea here was to be able to use the AI tool productively in an English classroom at pretty much any level, or that you could moderate for any level, within about half an hour and have something produced. These are all free. Some of them need email sign up. There are some limitations, of course, with the functionality and usability for the free versions. But until we get some more kind of support or clarity around which we can and can't use, I just like the getting in quick, using it, and kind of getting out and being able to share it in the classroom with others. And of course, there are many other similar tools, but I'm just going to show you a quick 4 that I use in my classroom. Thanks, John. The first one is Paint by Text, and this is an AI photo edit tool. And I'm just going to show you a couple of examples. Paint by Text, and there's a link in the blog. This was added on February 2nd this year, so it's quite new, and it needs a little bit more kind of expanding to be as appropriate or kind of as clear with what it produces as some of the more advanced ones. But actually, I really like it because, and click on the next one, please, John. When you go in, it's a very simple, clear front page. You get a choice of 3 artworks. And at the bottom, you can see there's a paint, and you just basically use a keyword or a very simple prompt to change one thing about this picture. And so this is good for lower levels because you can just use keywords. If you're doing colors or if you're doing some sort of animal, you can include that and you get an instantaneous change. But also if you wanted to, sometimes the pictures come out quite wonky, and there's a good conversation you can have with students about the information or the communication, the words you're saying, and in English might not be received in the same way. So when you get some really strange pictures back, thank you, John. And if we can hold in this one. So the second one, in this particular activity, we have the first initial original picture and then 3 variations that we then put together and presented to the class and explaining what prompts we used, what worked and what didn't work and why. The second one here, change his tie into a stripe, is interesting, and this has to do with AI. It's better to say what you want the actual AI to do as opposed to what you don't want it to do. And so here we have conversations about clear instructions, directions, and whatever the target language is. So we're just going to flip through the next couple of slides nice and slow just to see. If you can hold here, I love this one, particularly the last one, if you have a look at the prompts given here. And these were all done in the same class, so the same, officially the same level. And once the students have a bit of a play, I give them about 10 minutes. Then in this example, we upload our own picture. We talk about confidentiality and not, the photos that we allow to share more publicly on AI. And then we change a couple of things. Not only is it good for the instruction and using the language, but then we can break out into groups and do a compare and contrast between the different pictures to use what changes between the images. And this is a great activity. The more the students use it, the more sophisticated they get in their instruction. And then towards the end of the week, we'll use these pictures to explain what we learnt about using language, either the instruction, the vocabulary, or the output. All right, thanks, John. If we can click through. So that's paint by text. And of course, you can develop it and change it, whatever you would like to use to suit your class. The second tool I use is called Murph, and Murph is an AI text to voice. So let's click through here. So here's the front page. And again, it's a very simple, easy to use. If you're not familiar with AI, this is a great text to use. And I use it specifically for 2 features. Next slide, please. The speech to text, which you can use on the front page, is very simple. And you can see there's a choice of a couple of English speaking voices. And basically you can upload for free a certain amount, I think it's 100 words, and press play. So if you have an instruction, or if you would like the students to type out their own instruction, then hear what it would sound like. If they're doing an oral presentation, they can get a sense of pronunciation or word stress. And you can play that in class, and that's completely free without downloading anything. And the second feature you can do, I think it's 200 words you get for free, unlimited amount of 200 words. And the second one, if we click through the next slide, the feature for Murph, is if you sign up with an email, then you get 10 free minutes where you can type in a text or cut and paste in a text. And then you can select a voice and it will generate a verbal AI voice that actually is not sounding like computer voice, but you can choose all your different voices. Next slide, please, to have a look at that. Oh, okay. Actually, I think that's on the website. You can choose whatever voice you would like. On the left-hand side, explore the AI voices, and there's a couple of fantastic Australian voices. So you can pick and choose which one you like to suit your students, or your students, again, on the reverse, can use it if they've got presentation or they're working on pronunciation, can use it as a model. So quick and easy to use for text to voice. Thanks, John. Next one. Teach anything. Teach Anything is quick and easy. And again, a nice simple interface. Basically, you are writing a question. It's kind of a bit of ChatGPT feel about it, where you type in a question. And it could be, as a teacher, sometimes if I'm introducing a new topic and I'm just running a little bit there, I might type in how to introduce animal extinction, for example. And then you select your language in English and you have a choice of easy or difficult. You generate an answer. Next slide, please. And this is what the answers might look like. And you can do this as many times as you want. And the easy answer, again, it just shows if you've got lower level or if you'd like to use that as paragraphs or text, if you've got oral presentations, or if you'd like to get a conversation or group discussion started. And if we can hold here, the prompt here is, what are the top 3 tips to improve an oral presentation? On the left, we've got a 1, 2, 3, nice and simple, which you might want to cut up and give to groups and then they can develop it. On the right-hand side, in the middle and the right, when you get the advanced, it really expands it out. It will give you the principles and then also some applications. So this either the students can use for the work they're doing, or as the teacher, you can integrate it into some of the coursework or activities that you're doing in class. And it will generate this in literally 10 seconds. So a really good prompt to start in regards to answering a question. Next slide. Night Cafe is an image generator. There are so many image generators out there and some fantastic ones that produce some incredible artwork with very little input. This one is one of the basic models. You need an email to sign this up. You can generate one image as many times as you want, or if you want 4 images of the same prompt, you get 4 credits or 5 credits per day. So if we can click to the next slide, this is what it looks like once you sign up. On the left-hand side, you can select the style, and there's a lot of different styles for the free version. And sometimes in the class, I'll introduce this if they haven't used Night Cafe before, and just give them 10 or 15 minutes to click on a few different styles so they can get familiar with the one that they like using the same prompt. And then we'll start targeting either language or instruction vocabulary in regards to the prompt to get the one that they want. We don't go too much. I'll find usually students will go home and keep doing it and bring to class the next day a much better version that they've worked on. And next slide, please. And one example of how I've used Night Cafe is at the end of a unit of work looking at extinction. We were writing cause and effect. And to end on a more positive note, I asked the students to go into Night Cafe and reimagine the world for a more positive future for the animals, and to create an image that reflected that, and then to pair that with an explanation using their cause and effect writing we've been working on during the week to explain the image. I'm going to read this out very quickly so you can see. This is an example of Tony shared with permission. In the future, the worlds have changed. People have destroyed the environment for so long, and animals have nowhere. Many issues cause animal problem, and climate changes like emissions, cutting trees, and habitat all gone. The effects are animals have no food or habitat and are lowering numbers. But against extinction, the animals live. In the future, the sea animals are the kings. All water goes up and the world is all ocean seas. The fish and whale take over and live are happy to survive in underwater world with no people. It is a new future for animals. And what I like is there's a real symbiosis between the image, and really you can see bringing together some of those skills, the writing that we've been using and vocabulary in class. And our last slide is Futurepedia. I don't share this with the students in class. This is just for my teaching colleagues. If you haven't seen Futurepedia before, it is the one-stop go-to place for all your AI needs. I've shown you 3 or 4 very basic entry level, quick and easy AI tools that I use in class. Futurepedia is an updated largest AI tools repository. So if you like one, or your credits have run out at the free version, you can find an equivalent similar one and keep going ad nauseum. And this is where you will find all the information and tools that you need if you're interested in experimenting a bit more with AI. So part of what I was looking at here, the Paint by Text, the Murph AI, Teach Anything, and Night Cafe, was just some quick and easy tools to lean into and start practicing that was fast to bring into the classroom and that aligned, not adding extra work or just as an add-on fun thing to do. Although Friday 2 p.m, there's definitely an argument that that has a place as well. To create a picture and then use as discussion tools, or to draw questions to add into PowerPoint presentations if they're doing oral presentations, and for targeted language or writing. I've just found that these are quick and easy, and they're tools that the students would have either been familiar with or are quick to pick up. So I don't have to spend a lot of time instructing on how to use it, and more time in what they're using it for and how they're using it for their English language progression. So that's some ideas of how I've been using AI tools in my English classroom. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nina. That's fantastic. So many ideas there, and I'm looking forward to going onto your blog and looking through some of those slides and into the details. We don't have time really to take questions right now, but keep those ideas in your head, because you'll be able to discuss some of those with colleagues in breakout rooms at the end. We'll move right on now to Sue, who is one of the deputy conveners of the PEAL SIG, and a lot of you know Sue already. She's a language and learning advisor at Charles Darwin University, and talking about one of our favourite topics, which is rubrics. And gosh, how can we make them more efficiently? Thank you, Sue.
Not really. Okay, so can everyone see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up if, yep, okay, fantastic. All right, so nice to see. Thank you for all that, Nina. That was really, really useful. Mine's going to be a little bit different. It's looking at what I'm doing in class with my students. And I just want to make it really, really clear that this is not an example of best practice. Okay, I'm just an educator getting my head around these tools and how best to use them and how best to support my students, like everybody else here in this meeting, I think. And so I'm sharing what I've done recently, and that might be food for thought for some people, or I might get some feedback that I can use to make my practice better. So I'd be happy for that as well. So to begin, this is my context. I work at Charles Darwin University in the Northern Territory. So as a language and learning advisor based in the library, my job is basically to go in and work with a whole range of students doing a whole range of things. Lecturers approach me and they have a cohort of students with needs. I design workshops and I go in to support them. So as you can see here, most of our international students come from the Indian subcontinent or Southeast Asia. Only 14% of our students are international, but a lot more have a non-English speaking background, to use the terminology used by our analytics. Okay, so Charles Darwin University, like a lot of other institutes, scrambled in January to come up with a position around AI tool use for their students. The position was released in February, and basically it says that AI tools, it's assistive technology, okay? Students should use them. Students need to use them ethically and efficiently, and AI generated text is a resource like any other resource, and it can be used in assignments so long as it's cited. In addition, the university gives students free access to Grammarly. So they've been using Grammarly for some time to edit and proofread their assignments before submission. So it's kind of not unusual for them to use online tools to help them. Okay, so I work with a lot of units around the university, but most of my time is spent at the moment working on a master's thesis unit, first Masters of Engineering, IT and Data Science. I teach into that unit 14 workshops over the years, and I focus on helping students produce all of these assessment items. So I don't teach language per se, only in as much as they need to be polishing their language and using it well for their poster presentations and their thesis. I also have worked with environmental science. For environmental science, I go in and out and deliver workshops at different times. Okay, so in these cohorts, when I'm working with these students, 70% of both cohorts have English as their second or their third or their fourth language. Some of them, they're awesome students, these multilingual bright cookies, and but I have a mixture of domestic and international students within each of the class, so I'm juggling their needs. Okay, so the issues that we're facing at the moment is partly well, the age-old issue of students not engaging with rubric. They're just not using it at all, and that affects their success in creating their thesis or their essay or whatever they're working with. And I've found when I do go in to run workshops with students and, do the usual thing, get them into groups, working in peers, using rubric and a criteria to assess each other, I find they get really hung up on language. I mean, I want to look at all the elements of writing, and they'll just look at each other's language and point out the missing articles or problems with tenses. And, writing is so much more than that. So that's a bit of an issue. Right. Another issue is that students are a bit unclear on the university policies around AI tool use, and they don't really know how to use it efficiently and ethically. Just because the university puts out a position, it doesn't mean they really understand. So there's these two issues here. Okay, so first thing I did, the students had to write a literature review, and I thought, alrighty, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to get them in groups and we're going to have a great time and they're going to evaluate these texts. I thought by not giving them student-produced texts, I was hoping they would focus on things other than their language. So I produced a mini literature review through ChatGPT and through Perplexity AI, which is another tool students have been using and I like to use. And I got them, here's the criteria, here's the rubric that they're graded against. I thought, right, go in there and assess these tools and we'll see what comes out. So what do you think? Was it a good lesson or a bit or bad? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down to show me what you think happened. You're all so polite. Okay, it was crap. All right, it was really bad. It was partly because I think I just got a bit overexcited about using the tools and I'd forgotten a lot of the principles that I've learned of 30 years of English language teaching. And I realized that what was going on was the students could see that the AI generated text was not high quality writing, but they couldn't articulate why. Okay, and now the problem is the rubric itself is not very helpful. I have no control over how the students are graded. This is what they need to be great. This is what they need to understand, but they didn't really understand the rubric and I made too many assumptions about their knowledge about literature reviews, even though I'd taught it the week before. So more fool me. So I went in with the other group. I teach 2 groups, and I teach about 60 students at a time in a workshop. So I went in the next week with the second group, and this time I spent time brainstorming the purpose of literature reviews and reminding them that they've got to identify a gap in our knowledge, and they've got to identify all the seminal texts in the field and show the relationships between texts. I reminded them of the different ways they could structure their literature review chapters, and then we revised how to synthesize the literature so they don't end up with the dreaded shopping list literature review. Once we've done that, I then made sure I rewrote the criteria, unpacked all of that dense information, turned it into a checklist and revised it, and then did the same thing. Students in groups working with AI generated text and assessing it. This time it worked really well. The students were able to articulate what was wrong with the text. They were able to formulate responses and give advice about what, okay, imagine a student wrote this text. What would you tell them to do in order to improve it? And they did a really good job. A lot of them were saying that they picked up the fact that it was very generic. It really didn't suit the purpose of a literature review. And what I liked about it is that they weren't hung up on language. They were freed from that language burden in order to look at all the other elements of writing that they need to master. Okay, so we had a lot of discussion about this, about the difference between accurate writing and quality writing, about good prompts. Now, these were IT students, and they were telling me that I have to write my prompts better. So thank you, chaps. We talked about all the other uses that they could have for AI tools, like identify, these guys are already using it. Okay, they're creating summaries, they're creating text outlines, they're correcting their own drafts with it. I then went in with environmental science, and I expected these students wouldn't be quite on the ball. A lot of them were undergrads and they weren't writing a thesis. I was wrong. Okay, they did a really, really good job. They were as equally as proficient as the master's thesis writers. Whoops. And the rubric that they were graded on was a lot easier for them to understand. So that may have made it easier. But what was interesting in this rubric, language is assessed, where their literature review language isn't. And this led to a discussion of Quillbot. Now, I don't know if you guys are using it, but Quillbot is a paraphrasing tool that the students are using to do all their paraphrasing for them. We put some text into Quillbot and checked out the paraphrase, and I learned something really interesting, or I saw something interesting here. What I found was the international students were unable to spot the problems in the paraphrase that the local students did. Could anyone guess what that problem may have been? I know you don't have a lot of time to read it properly. Yeah, okay, you don't have time to read. Citations, no, the key or the main idea. Okay, so I'm focused, this was a language thing, and what I found really interesting, right? The original text referred to sorry business. Quillbot paraphrased it as saying sorry when someone dies, which completely misses the point. Now, all the domestic students from the territory, they knew this, they were all over it, right? But the international students had no chance. So the local cultural context was totally missing. Also, it's the original text that's traditional sites mark traditional practices. And it was translated as traditional practices are commemorated by significant sites, which again has a different meaning to what it actually means. So that led to a really good discussion on the limitations on paraphrasing tools. So to reflect on my experience, I'm just about out of time now. Okay, what I liked about using AI text to work with rubric is that students were not distracted by language and surface issue things, which once they get through the direct entry courses and they're into university, they're being assessed in a different way. So they were able to focus on the elements their lecturers value. Okay, it reduced their cognitive load. Okay, so they were able to focus on writing as thinking and writing as a process. And also we had a fantastic discussion because until now it was secret. They thought Quillbot was cheating and they thought that some of the things they were doing might have been cheating. So we were able to have an open discussion about the ways to use this. I've had a lot of reflecting on this soon. I think that as PEAL practitioners, we need to be training students in how to use these tools. Okay, that's part of our role now. AI literacy, I mean, our roles are expanding. AI literacy is important and we need to be helping students with that. Here's a text that I found very, very interesting. I recommend you look this up later. It's very interesting discussion on what it means for students to be using AI tools. And that's me. I was very quick. I apologize. Thank you for listening and drop me a line if you have any feedback or questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sue. Thanks for sharing that journey of, exploring the ways that we can use it. And as you mentioned, a lot of us are doing that within our practice. And I think, yeah, as you mentioned, this is a great kind of forum for us to continue this conversation and support each other. And that's what this is all about. I want to welcome Lana Kandubovic. We're very, very happy to have her with us today, all the way from Montenegro, where I believe it's about 8:45 in the morning. So Lana is a very experienced education consultant, learning experience designer, has worked in ELT, ESP, EAP, as a teacher trainer, as a translator as well. We reached out to Lana after we saw a webinar from Scott Thornbury where she was a participant and she was talking about prompt engineering and sharing some really amazing work from her own forays into engineering prompts to be able to produce really good results from AI engines. So we're really, really happy to have Lana here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Without much ado, I'll start because I know I have only 8 minutes. And today I'd like to talk about my experience with AI and using large language models, or ChatGPT in particular, for input modification. I believe that this is one of the areas in language teaching and learning where large language models may be both highly indispensable and useful. In other words, they can help us do things that we wouldn't be able to do or would be extremely challenging to do without them. Using authentic text in language learning can be problematic due to the complex syntax, technical vocabulary, specialized jargon, which can lead to students being unprepared and teachers having to rely on various strategies to make text more comprehensible, like pre-teaching vocabulary. It is particularly relevant in the context of EAP, ESP, English as a medium of instruction, or EMI and CLIL programs. This may be addressed by text modification using a large language model. For this case study, I'll follow Michael Long's classification of input and craft particular prompts for ChatGPT to generate and modify various types of input. So the first type of input is genuine input, or authentic materials that have not been specifically designed for pedagogical use. One of the options that we now have with ChatGPT is to use it to generate text in various genres and styles and at a level of complexity that is appropriate for our students. While the question of whether such text can be considered authentic remains open, this approach may be a viable solution. Technically, the prompt you see here could be used by a blogger or writer to generate content for their blog or newspaper for international readership or a particular target group of readers. I won't be reading the whole prompt, but I will share the link to the slide so you will be able to read prompts in particular in details. The elements of the prompt include the role and task, the role or persona and context, Act as a machine learning expert. Your task is to write an informal blog post for young adults and a formal news article on artificial intelligence. The task specifying the length around 300 words, but we should remember that it will never produce the output of 300 words because ChatGPT does not understand words. It uses the token system, which is about 75 tokens per 100 words. Then the level of target readers on the CFR scale and constraints with format and style and tone parameters. Write it in the style of Simon Sinek, for example, be engaging and interesting, add nuance. There are two components that are particularly important. The first one is your input text or initial information that you would like ChatGPT to use. As we know, ChatGPT does not have an inbuilt notion of what is true and what is not. Its function basically to guess the next word. This means that it may unintentionally stitch wrong snippets of information together. And that will produce all that bias and hallucination that educators are busy talking about online. By providing our input, we condition ChatGPT's predictions and avoid hallucinations or bias or falsehoods in the output. So it uses just the information that we provide, and then based on that, it builds its text. The next component is your target level on the CFR. By default, ChatGPT generates text at about B2 level, approximately B2 level on the CFR. So you can specify the level you need for your students. From my experience, it does a pretty good job in terms of CFR levels. It can also be used as a level profiler, but I think that's for another case study. And that's what makes it similar to the process of text simplification, or adapting original text or writing text for teaching a specific grammar or linguistic form. By and large, if you have ever written a graded reader or tried to simplify text, you know that the process may be immensely time consuming. It's not something that you would do within 20 minutes right before the class. So with ChatGPT, you can do it much faster in an efficient manner. However, second language acquisition studies have raised concerns about simplified input, stating that acquisition potential is sacrificed for comprehensibility, thus excluding many new opportunities for learning. ChatGPT can be a useful tool to bridge the simplification and authenticity of the text. To show how this works in practice, I will use this quote. I won't be reading it. Let us use this paragraph as an input text and try and simplify it using ChatGPT. Here are two simplified versions of our text. As I mentioned before, our prompt defines the quality of output. A simple prompt, make the text easy to read or simplify the text without setting constraints, will not produce the best results in terms of quality. So that's what Sue and Nina were talking about. The quality is rather poor if the prompt is simple, while setting a role and constraints will help us generate a more suitable and engaging text for students. The second prompt is act as an experienced writer and editor. Your task is to improve comprehensibility of the following text for students whose first language is not English. Simplify complex language without sacrificing accuracy or depth. Clarify confusing or unclear concepts using a metaphor or analogy. And then it produces a really good text that could be used in the classroom. Imagine that you're trying to build a big, strong house and you need lots of different materials to do it. However, if you only have a small set of materials to work with, like only bricks and no other building supplies, your house won't be as strong or as interesting. Similarly, when you constantly use the same limited set of words and sentence structures in your language learning, it's like using only bricks to build a house. You may be able to understand what you are reading or hearing, but you won't be getting the full picture or the chance to learn and use new things. So that's actually a simplified version of that SLA paragraph. Unlike existing platforms or tools for simplifying text, ChatGPT offers a high level of flexibility and iteration. In the process, you can also prompt ChatGPT to shorten or extend the text and particular language items, add a dialogue, generate personalized content that is tailored to your students' needs or interests. Elaborated input employs devices like redundancy, synonyms, explanations, or paraphrasing. Just to illustrate this, is an original sentence. AI models that generate stunning imagery from simple phrases are evolving into powerful, creative, and commercial tools. And the elaborated input would be AI models, computer programs that generate stunning imagery, pictures that are beautiful and attractive from simple phrases or simple prompts, words that are easy to understand, are evolving, becoming more complex into powerful creative and commercial tools, products that can be used to make money and express ideas. In terms of student comprehension, students understand elaborated input almost as well as a simplified version and better than the authentic version. And here's the prompt I made to turn our text into elaborated input. The prompt has a task: explain all words or phrases or concepts that a 5-year-old would not understand in the sentence. Keep the sentence intact. Do not remove or replace any parts in the sentence. Only add explanations or synonyms within the sentence after the words you explain. Follow the example below. And here's the example for ChatGPT. I mean, there are two things about prompting or prompt crafting here. When making a prompt in general, we should remember that our prompt should be simple enough for the model to understand it. We don't know what it knows. It doesn't know what it knows itself. And the prompt should provide ideally a particular example for the model to follow. It's always a good idea to actually show to the model what your desired output is, what you actually want to get. To work with this type of input modification, I would suggest using the model in the playground. That's the model that drives ChatGPT. Here you can set the temperature. This parameter controls the level of randomness in the generated text. So if we need the model to strictly follow our prompt without any deviation, we should set the minimum temperature. After it has generated the output, we can check it, ask the model to regenerate it if we are not entirely happy with the result, and then modify it by prompting the model to break down long sentences into shorter ones and incorporate linking words. In other words, to generate modified, elaborated input. The resulting text may be used further to create bimodal or multimodal input with the help of text-to-speech, text-to-image, and text-to-video software. And here's the example with our sample text that we have just elaborated.
Constantly recycling the same grammatical patterns and limited set of vocabulary items results in impoverished input, which is counterproductive from an acquisition perspective. Acquisition potential is sacrificed for comprehensibility, thus excluding many new opportunities for learning. Comprehensibility is needed, but language acquisition from the input should not be sacrificed.
Well, thank you. If you have any questions or would like to see other use cases and ChatGPT prompts and prompt templates for teachers to make lesson plans or assessment rubrics and others, please visit my blog, Guiltication, and reach out to me online. Thank you. Well, I hope I managed some of the time.
Thanks so much, Lana. Amazing. I'm just going to put the link to your blog there. It's an award-winning blog. There is a lot of resources on there. I've used a lot of it already. So thank you again, Lana, for being here. Now, Sophie, Kat, we definitely don't have time for breakout rooms. We've definitely gone over time. But what I thought we could do is maybe just call for 1 or 2 questions to some of the presenters. So much information we've received from all 3 of you today. So I wonder if there's anyone who would like to ask a question or make a comment to any of the presenters today. Feel free to raise your hand or put a question in the chat.
James, we've got a question in the chat.
Okay, great.
So from Heather.
From Heather, yeah. So Heather's saying, what advice would you give to teachers who are hesitant to use AI in the classroom? So let me open that up to any of the presenters who'd like to jump in there.
I'm happy to jump in and start an answer on that.
Sure.
Heather, lots of teachers are very hesitant to use AI in the classroom. What I've found is either asking another teacher to show me over a coffee just literally in 10 minutes, because if I can't get it in 10 minutes and just see if it's something that I'm interested in, then I'd probably do something like watch a YouTube video, that kind of thing. I'm more practical in the way that I use it. So if I can't get it in a short time, then I'm not 100% confident I'll be able to show my students as well. So I'm a beta tester for my class. Yeah, so just asking someone else or sitting in, I've got a lot of ideas from sitting in on other teachers' classes in the last 10, 20 minutes and just asking if I can ask them, can I see how you use it? How do you introduce it and what are you using it for? And once I get a sense of that, of kind of adapting it, just in breadcrumbs, just small incremental kind of touchstones, or use one simple AI tool and then use it in a variety of different ways, because then you're not learning a lot of new tools. You're just working with one, but using it, and your class isn't relearning or learning lots of different tools. You just use one throughout, for example, a 5-week course, and just see what you could do and expand and contract it for, and build confidence that way.
Thanks, Nina. Lana or Sudha, do you want to add anything to that?
No, not really. Not really. I find that my students teach me more than I teach them when it comes to using the actual tools. They're well ahead of me. So.
And just, oh, sorry, Svetlana.
No, just a thought. I mean, if you're hesitant about the tools, that probably means that you can do things without them. But if you find something where these tools will be useful, I mean, you will be able to do things faster, then you will definitely be willing to use them. So it's a matter of trying, and it's a matter of knowing why you are using them. If you use them just for engagement purpose, then probably in 5 minutes or in a week after playing with them, you will stop using them. But again, you need to find the value point or the zone of genius of the AI tool. And then it will be, I mean, the willingness to use them will increase, will go over the roof for sure.
Yeah, I think that ties in really well with the comment that Adam made in the chat, saying he really appreciates the pedagogical intentionality and the willingness to experiment, as Lana was kind of indicating in that answer. You know, thinking about what's the purpose of this tool in my classroom. There's one other question here which we might just have time for.
James, while you're looking for that second question, can I just give one other suggestion?
Yeah.
The other thing I found really helpful is to set a task to the students, to the class, to do a presentation. They select their own AI tool to use in the English classroom, and in 5 or 10 minutes over the course, and you can, you know, hit a couple of points. How do you use it? What's your evaluation? What is it good for in English? And whatever suits their level. And then that's you getting lots of ideas from the student's perspective, and they can teach you and expand your repertoire that way. And it's also a productive way that they're sharing knowledge amongst themselves.
So look, we are out of time, but there's just, I guess, 2 questions that maybe the presenters or other people could answer in the chat there. One about use of AI voice prompts. Maybe people have recommendations for any AI voice prompts that they're using. If you could put that in the chat. And then the other question that might be able to answer in the chat is any higher education courses or units that you know of to study AI in education. Maybe some people can write some answers in the chat to that. But I might just hand back to Kat to wrap us all up. It's been a wonderful session with so many ideas that we can take into our own practice.
Thanks a lot, James, and thank you very much to our 3 presenters. It was a fantastic diversity of different approaches, and I guess reflecting what Adam Gall put in the chat too, it's fantastic to see the willingness to experiment, and then also the willingness to present your experiments to a group. And as Sue said, it's not necessarily here about best practice. It's about that ability to experiment and test and try and keep developing, because as we know, these kind of tools are evolving so quickly. So we're never going to really reach a point where we would be able to say that we're necessarily experts in the use of the tool or experts in using the tool with our students. So it's that ability to constantly adapt and be flexible and respond and experiment. So it was fantastic to see that in all of the presentations as well. We are out of time, so I'd like to thank everyone for their participation and really looking forward to seeing you at the next events over this year. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.